It is a new year, and with that, we're all setting out on new endeavors. Personally, I have decided to go a bit unorthodox this year and do something a bit strange and a bit taxing on the mind, if I'm being honest. In the long run, this might not be good for my mental, but oh well, fuck it, we ball. This year, I'm going to be watching 20 harem animes, 20 trashy harem animes to be more specific. You know, there's a difference between just a harem anime and a trashy harem anime. But anyways, I'm going to be watching 20 trashy harem animes, and then I'm going to review them. Hopefully, I'll have time to review them all. I might have, watching them is one thing, but reviewing and writing the scripts for these sort of videos takes time. But, I'll try my best to see how many I can get out before the end of the year. Now, harem animes can come in lots of shapes and forms. Sometimes an anime is lumped under the harem genre simply because it has a protagonist who is surrounded primarily by other female characters, regardless of whether those female characters are treated as romantic interest by the story, or sometimes they just get lumped under there and have the harem tag slapped on there, which, which leads to a lot of variety in the genre, which is weird, because, the range can be pretty wide, actually. On one hand of the spectrum, you can have an anime like High School DxD, which is notorious for its sexualization, and on the other hand, you can have an anime like Duel, Parallel Trouble Adventure, which is the one we will be looking at today. Now, obviously, this video is the first of many in this harem review series, and as a result, I'd like to lay down some ground rules and sort of a structure to these reviews because they're going to be heavily segmented. Basically, I'm going to split it up into different parts, talk about one aspect of the series, move on, talk about another aspect, and at the end of each of these segments, I will give a sort of ranking out of 10 of each of these individual aspects. The first segment will be the synopsis, which is where I'm just going to give a very short, brief summary of the series. I'm not going to go over the entire thing like I did in my Smurfs video. It was just a one-time thing because I had a lot to talk about with that, and I wanted to discuss every single part of the movie. This is more so just going to be like, again, a short, brief synopsis. Just give you an idea of what this series is. I'm not going to go over the entire plot and like all the details of it. When relevant, I will bring up plot points that you might need to know, at least when I'm talking about the characters, because the harem genre kind of shines with its characters, not really its story, which isn't to say there aren't any good stories in this genre. It's just that the actual characters and the cast is the main attraction. So as a result, this review is going to be a lot more character-centered, I guess. I don't know why I said that like that. After the synopsis, I'm going to talk about what I am going to call Protagonist-kun. This is basically just talking about the protagonist. The reason I go with that name, Protagonist-kun, is because I'm presumably going to be watching a lot of these trashy harem animes, and when you do that a lot, these bland cookie cutter MCs start to blend with one another. The guy we're talking about today in this anime, Parallel Trouble Adventure, he's okay. Maybe it's just because we're starting off with the first one, so I do actually remember his name. But as we go on forward, I'll probably start to lose track of these guys. I'm not even gonna lie. But yeah, Protagonist-kun, that's just the name we're gonna go with him for him. But not today. Today it's gonna be about Kazuki Yotsuga. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What am I doing? I'm jumping into the review while I'm laying down the rules already. Yeah, pretty much just gonna talk about what I didn't like about the MC, what I did like about them, how they relate to the rest of the cast, all that kind of sweet stuff that people love in reviews. Next up is gonna be the meat of the review, which is the harem. I'm gonna talk in length about each of the girls in the harem, how they relate to Kazuki, and how they relate to one another, because that's another important aspect that I have to discuss when I'm talking about these kind of casts. It's not just in relation to the Protagonist-kun guy. I have to talk about how do these people interact with one another, because again, they're characters, they're not just love interests. But we'll see going forward how a lot of these shows handle that kind of relationship. And again, when I'm talking about the characters, I will address any relevant plot points that you might need to understand the context of a scene I'm talking about, or a certain interaction between two characters. So despite the fact I'm not going over the entire plot, I will still be giving you the things that you need to know. Lastly is music and aesthetics. Now, I'm not really a music major or like a big music theory guy. I do play music, I do make music, but I'm not at a level where I'm able to give you like a professional analysis of music. So this segment is probably going to be the most subjective one, where it's just going to be kind of vibes. Did I fuck with the soundtrack? Did I like the overall aesthetic of the show? That's pretty much just what this segment is going to be. Yeah, music, sound design, animation. I'm not going to talk too much about animation. This isn't a genre that I wouldn't say necessarily needs that crazy animation, so that's not really an aspect I'm going to consider all that much. At the end of each of these segments, I'm going to give a ranking out of 10. I'm going to have two rankings, actually. One is going to be my objective ranking, and the other is going to be my fun ranking. So the objective one, as it says, it's obviously going to be me considering all the critiques and all my thoughts on the show, and then I'm going to give a grade based off of all those thoughts. And the fun one is just going to be, how much did I enjoy watching this? Because sometimes you can watch something that's bad, but you can still have fun with it. And that's basically what the fun meter is going to be for. The ranking of each segment is going to also contribute to that final ranking. And I'm going to give my overall thoughts on the show at the end, whether I recommend this or not. But yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say for the structure and the ground rules I was setting before we get into the actual review. Also, I didn't mention it yet, but peep the braids. Yeah, I got cornrows. They're looking a bit frizzy right now, but that's just because I got them in like a week ago, and my product that I ordered from Amazon hasn't come because these guys are fucking evil. But yeah, I'm losing my mind now. I'm getting ahead of myself. Initially, I was gonna start off the series with Love Hina, but that's an anime that I really love and has affected me in a lot of ways, so I want to kind of save that for a much longer, more in-depth video. But I thought, dual trouble parallel adventure. The name's a mouthful. I don't even know if you have to say the dual part. Parallel Trouble Adventure, I'll call it that. Parallel Trouble Adventure is a nice, simple 13-episode show I could just talk about. Love Hina is a lot longer. That will likely also result in a longer video, and I wanted to start off with something a bit more simple and light. But without further ado, let's get into the review.
Sonata?
Our story follows Kazuki Yotsuka, the socially awkward high school boy. I know, very original for an anime of this kind. Kazuki's a bit weird, and he sees giant mech robots fighting around. Robots that other people presumably can't see for some reason. Nobody else reacts to these giant robots he sees. Sometimes he reacts to them, and other people make fun of him for it. So, he's kind of shunned by all of his classmates. And it's just kind of a weird guy that they all write off. Kazuki has a blog where he writes about these giant mech fights that he sees. And one day, the most popular girl at school, Mitsuki Sanada, approaches him and tells him she likes his blog and invites him to her house. Well, you heard it here, folks. You just keep being your loser-ass chud self, and eventually the most popular girl at school will approach you and fall in love with you for no reason. Granted, Mitsuki isn't actually in love with Kazuki, at least not now. I'm getting ahead of myself. She actually only approaches him to lure him to her father, Dr. Ken Sanada, who wants to study Kazuki for his research on parallel worlds. Not sure why, actually. I don't know how this guy who studied parallel worlds somehow connected it to this high school kid. That's a question that never really gets answered, but whatever. Long story short, Mitsuki ends up triggering her father's machine, and it sends her and Kazuki to a parallel world. Hey, just like the title. A world with super advanced technology and giant mechs. Kazuki ends up joining the Earth Defense Force. Jesus Christ, I can't speak English today. Kazuki ends up joining the Earth's Defense Force with Mitsuki, where they get to pilot giant robots and fight against the Rara army, led by this dude, Lord Rara. Which sounds quite silly when I say it out loud, but it's very cool, I assure you. It's not actually that cool. Now the catch is, in this world, only women are able to pilot these mechs. Only women are even, registered as pilots by the mechs. A dude can't just get in and control it. Kazuki can, though, which makes him special, because we can't have our main character self-insert dude not be special for no reason, But anyways, yeah, so only women can pilot these robots, so Kazuki kind of has to hide his identity as a man from the public, which, leads to this scene.
Oh, yeah. Let's see here. I made them as soft as the real things. Use them for anti-shock protection. I may have to get some for myself.
Commander Sonata. What exactly is it you're doing?
We were just checking for shock absorption?
Yeah.
Dr. Sanada is a very interesting character, I assure you. But that's pretty much the gist of the show. Kazuki and Mitsuki get transported to a parallel world and they have to fight in giant robots against other evil giant robots. And shenanigan ensues from there. So that's kind of all you need to know. Like I said earlier, I'm not going to go into the very intricate workings of the plots. I'm just going to give you that, and whenever I need to bring up a new fact, I will. But anyways, let's move on to the next part, Protagonist Kun. Let's talk about Kazuki Yotsuka. Personality-wise, he leaves a lot to be desired. A lot of these harem protagonists aren't really characters, as much as they're blank slates for the viewers to project themselves onto, and as a result, usually they're severely lacking in any noticeable character traits. Kazuki's only real flair of personality is his blog. In the first episode, we see him typing away at that thing a lot of times. We see him doing it at the dinner table. We see him do it on his way to school. We see him do it in the middle of class, and the teacher kind of gets on his ass for, typing on his phone in the middle of class. It's not really a phone, it's a handheld device thing where he updates his blog on. We even get a brief scene where his mom kind of implies that, he spends too much time doing this. So at first you think, okay, that's cool. He has a hobby. He has an interest. He has something that he works on besides the plot, because a lot of times in these stories the main character just kind of mooks around and does nothing until the plot finds him. So it was cool to see that, you know, Kazuki actually had something that he was doing before the plot kicks in. You know, he wasn't just walking around and existing, he was writing his blog. Unfortunately, after the first like 2 episodes, we don't really see much of that blog anymore, which is a shame. You know, typically you want to give your character like 1 or 2 hobbies, you know, to flesh them out, make them feel more grounded and realistic, more 3-dimensional, and sometimes even to inform us, the viewers, on this character's personality based on the hobby of choice. Like, for example, I thought Kazuki was gonna like be this very informative guy who like really liked documentation, and that skill was gonna kind of come into play when he eventually got into fighting robots and shit, but it just never really comes up at all. Like, you know, his skills of writing from the blog don't mean anything. The blog doesn't even mean anything in the end eventually. It's just a way to get him and Mitsuki to meet at the start and kick off the plot, which was kind of a disappointment for me. I showed a scene earlier where Dr. Sanada was touching Kazuki in the costume thing, and I'm gonna provide further context for that. Basically, in like episode 3, Kazuki is put in a female pilot's outfit, because like I said earlier, only women can pilot these mechs. They have to kind of hide that he's a man piloting them from the general public, because, you know, it's just hold information over your enemies. You can't let them know what you know, which was pretty smart on Dr. Sanada's part. You know, he's a bit of an odd guy, but sometimes he has his moments. But anyways, yeah, they put Kazuki in a female suit, and he walks into the class, and then he gets made fun of, and then he runs off in a fit, sort of crying, I don't know, and then he just leaves. I really don't understand what the point of that episode was. I thought it was gonna sort of inform us about his character. You know, why doesn't he really like being perceived as a girl? And I thought they were gonna sort of go down sort of queer-coded story path, because, you know, you have this guy who's lived his life entirely as a dude up until this point, and now this sentient machine thing is registering him as a woman. How does he come to terms with that? How does that make him feel? You know, but it just never really goes any deeper than, oh, I don't like to be put in a girl's outfit, and I'm gonna whine and bitch about it. And the episode just revolves with Dr. Sanada going, you know what, we'll give you a guy's outfit instead. Which, okay, if you could just do that, why didn't you just do that in the start? I don't understand. And it's a shame, because they could have easily gone for a story about, you know, identity. Have Kazuki question himself, you know, what does this mean that this alien supercomputer is registering him as a woman? What does that say about him? But it just never does. It never goes that route. It never does anything deeper with Kazuki's character, which I found quite upsetting. In terms of likability, as far as romantic interests go, there isn't much either. Kazuki's just kind of alright. Again, the show is here to sell you a fantasy where you're a perfect guy and women just kind of fall in love with you for being, you know, a sort of nice guy. So Kazuki just kind of has no flaws, really, besides being sometimes inadequate, but that never really comes into play in any meaningful way. Yeah, Kazuki doesn't even have much desirable traits, but yet girls find themselves tripping over him, which again is part of the fantasy. So, you know, dead dove don't eat. I don't know if that's how the saying is said. Let's move on. I sort of like his dynamic with Mitsuki's father, Dr. Sanada. No, it's not very deep, but they have their moments where it's like, oh, these guys are kind of alike, and it just leads to some fun moments, I guess. There's nothing really going on there. Also, Dr. Ken Sanada is kind of the only other dude that Kazuki ever interacts with. He has these 2 friends at school, but they're not characters. I don't even know their names or what they look like. They're nothing. Yeah, Dr. Ken and Kazuki are pretty much the only male characters in this show, if I'm being honest. And Lord Rara, who's the evil leader of the Rara army, if you remember that guy. Again, I don't have much more to say about Kazuki. He was just kind of alright. Now, his voice actor does a decent job too, so I guess that's a plus. Overall, I'd say he's like a 7 out of 10. I don't know, he's alright. Okay, enough about that, dude. Let's move on to the harem. This anime's harem consists of 4 characters: Mitsuki Sanada from another dimension, D, and Yayoi Shueil. I don't even think I pronounced that right, but I don't really care anymore. I hate Yayoi so much, and I have a lot to say about her, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Whatever. Typically in a harem, there's some sort of hierarchy amongst the girls. You know, you have your main end game girl, and the rest are just kind of fodder. And in Dual Parallel, our main girl is Mitsuki Sanada. I have quite a lot written down about Mitsuki. She probably has the longest segment out of all of these characters. Mitsuki is the main girl in the harem, like I said earlier, and she's kind of the only one who has any sort of real meaningful interaction with Kazuki. Well, at least as meaningful as a harem anime gets. You know, that's kind of a low bar. I like her character a lot. Like, she has quite a bit of personality, at least at the start. You know, she's bold, she's confident, she can get a bit jealous, which could have been a good flaw, but unfortunately no consequences ever come from it. I really like her relationship with Kazuki, and not just on a romantic level. In episode 5, Mitsuki and Kazuki have to pretend to be siblings so the kids at school don't question their closeness together. Because remember, they're in a new world, and they're now moving to this new school, and it would be kind of weird if... Well, it wouldn't actually be weird, but by harem anime standards, where all the boys in the school are jealous of the main character, it would be weird if he was just hanging out with this really pretty girl. So they just kind of pretend like they're siblings. For some reason, they just dropped the sibling stuff after that one episode where they have to pretend, which really annoyed me because honestly, I prefer Kazuki and Mitsuki as siblings. I think their relationship works a lot better that way as opposed to being romantic in nature. You know, there's not much there, and they have these really small, cute moments where it's like, okay, yeah, I can see that being like a sister, like a brother and his slightly older sister. And I was like, they could have just gone that route, but I mean, obviously, you know, and maybe it's a good thing they didn't go that route because even if they did try pushing them as siblings, they'd probably still just make them date, if we're being honest. I'm not sure if Kazuki likes Mitsuki. I'm not sure, really. Like, looking back at this, I don't remember a single scene where he shows or internally talks about any sort of feelings he has. You know, like, there's occasional scenes where he, like, blushes or is flustered when she's, like, close to him, but I don't think we ever get any sort of actual confirmation that he has, like, concrete feelings for her. In episode 11, they both end up going back to their original timeline, and in that episode, there's a really cute scene where they're on the beach and, you know, they're messing around, and I thought that was, you know, that was a really nice scene. But then they're on the beach again, and Mitsuki ends up finally expressing her feelings to Kazuki, and she tells him, oh, I care about you, and I'd like you to stay here. And it's such a nice, wholesome scene, and you think, oh, this is the moment where the relationship is going to move forward. But guess what? Kazuki was fucking asleep. He didn't hear any of that stuff. And this is a very annoying thing that a lot of these shows do, is they have the characters express their feelings to the audience, but not to one another, which I don't understand. I don't need to know what Mitsuki's feeling. I want to see Kazuki know what Mitsuki's feeling and how he responds to that. That's what makes a good story. I don't really see how I gain anything from knowing her thoughts if it never actually affects anyone else in the story. So, you know, that scene is just completely pointless, and it pissed me off, and I hated it. Mitsuki's flaws, in air quotes, if you can see that, not really a flaw, is that she gets jealous easily. And I say in air quotes because the show kind of just treats it less of an actual character flaw and more as just a device for more harem shenanigans. Like, initially at the start, again, because Mitsuki starts off really strong, at first you think, okay, that's a part of her character, that's a flaw. You know, she gets really jealous of Kazuki when he just comes in and he's whooping ass with this robot when she's trained for a bit longer than him, because it's weird, but when they both got sent to the other world, Kazuki arrived a month later than Mitsuki. I'm not going to talk about why, but just know that Mitsuki was there for a month before Kazuki finally showed up. And so she's more skilled than him, but he's still able to perform as well as her and sometimes even outperform her. And she gets frustrated by that, which was cool. You know, that adds some friction to the relationship. How is she going to let go of that jealousy and just, you know, take pride in her work and stop feeling inadequate and all that? But it just doesn't go there. After like the first few episodes, eventually her jealousy is just only directed towards the other girls when they're in close proximity to Kazuki. And I was like, why do that? Why just reduce her? Like, again, these shows just kind of reduce all the characters to being about the main character. You know, she can't have anything in her own right where she has to look inside and say, hey, why am I feeling this way? How do I get over this? It has to be, oh, I don't want that girl around you, so I'm gonna get mad at that girl for being around you. And I just thought that was a waste of potential. Overall, to sum up, Mitsuki, I liked her. I liked her at the start a lot, but kind of drops the ball in the later half, so yeah, just a whatever. No, I wouldn't even call her a whatever character. She's okay. They're like an 8.5 out of 10. Easily my favorite character in the show, if I'm being honest. Our next character in the harem is D. D is a very strange character. She's an alien robot cyborg thingy, and, you know, I'm not going to get into the whole lore of this series and where she came from and all that, but, you know, it's a bit convoluted, and I don't think any of you watching this care. And she kind of feels that role of the non-expressive girl who still has feelings for you, except she kind of just doesn't. Dee's character is hard to talk about, you know, because she doesn't do anything. I'm not kidding. Besides, like, close-ups of her during tense scenes that are, like, subtle foreshadowing or supposed to be subtle foreshadowing, she kind of just does nothing at all. Like, she's on the mech piloting team with Kazuki and Mitsuki, so they're kind of like a trio, and she pilots mechs, I guess, but besides that, in terms of interaction, she doesn't do anything, because, again, she's, like, kind of mute. She doesn't really say anything. She never really expresses any emotion. Like I said, everything revolving around her is strictly foreshadowing up until the very end. And, you know, the only character she has any sort of response to is Kazuki. Like, as soon as she first sees him, you know, she walks up to him, she's, like, revolving around him, and the other character's like, oh, that's pretty interesting. Why is she so interested in you? And as a result, they eventually move her into Ken Sanada's house to live with Mitsuki and Kazuki, because they're like, oh yeah, let's study her behavior around Kazuki, so let's keep her around just so we can keep an eye on them, see how she reacts to being around him. But again, even when she's around Kazuki, she still doesn't really talk to him at all, and they don't really share any moments at all. And then out of nowhere in the finale, she gets her real body back, and she's all like, Kazuki, I'm in love with you. And I was like, what? When? Why? How did that happen? How did she fall in love with him? What? You can't just give us nothing the entire show and expect us to care about her in the end. Again, with the sibling dynamic thing, why not just go that route? You know, like throughout the entire season, D kind of feels more like a little sister as opposed to like a romantic partner. So I feel like that would have made more sense if they just, kind of kept her as her own little thing, as the little sister or whatever of the group, and they could all just be like, oh yeah, that's like our little sister, we look after and shit. But then they come in with oh, I'm actually in love with you. And again, how does D even know these feelings are love? Because when she confesses to Kazuki and when she finally gains her body back and she's able to speak now, she's like, oh, I never felt this before. I was trying to make sense of these feelings, and I realized what it is, love. And I'm like, but is it romantic? How do you know it's romantic? Why does it have to be romantic? For my sake, I'm gonna headcanon it as her love for him is just familial. I'm just, just so I can have some peace of mind, I'm gonna say that's what they're doing. I don't believe that was the intention, but that's how I'm gonna choose to interpret that. That's the only way I can really stomach this character. Overall, just a nothing character. She doesn't do anything throughout the entire show, so I don't care all that much about her. On to the next character, we have Mitsuki Rara. Now remember, in the parallel world, there's an ongoing battle between the Earth's Defense Force and the Rara Army. And in episode 9, it's revealed in this world, Mitsuki's counterpart is the daughter of Lord Rara, who's like the evil guy. So the Mitsuki of this parallel dimension is Lord Rara's daughter. And it was an alright twist, I didn't really mind it. We'd seen her before that, and she had like this weird getup, and so it was kind of impossible to even like equate the two together. They seemed like completely different characters. So it was kind of like surprising when it was like, oh, that's Mitsuki of this dimension? Okay. But I didn't mind it, it was pretty cool. Kazuki gets stranded in enemy territory on his own, and he isn't recognized as an enemy pilot because, remember, the rest of the world doesn't know that the Earth's Defense Force has a male pilot, so they just kind of discard him as, oh, he's just a guy who got hurt in a crash, he's not the pilot. And as a result, Mitsuki Rara takes him in to her house, and she nurses him back to health because he kind of gets fucked up a little bit from the crash. He crashes into Rara territory, that's all you need to know. For the rest of this review, I'm just gonna call her Mrs. Ra. The Mitsuki Rara, I'm just gonna call her Mrs. Ra to avoid confusion between the two Mitsukis. So yeah, Mrs. Ra is the Mitsuki of the parallel dimension. At first, she's presumed to be evil, but it turns out that she kind of just puts herself in a trance whenever she has to do any of the Rara's army's dirty work. Like, it's never really explained how she puts herself under this trance. She just kind of, so it's kind of like a split personality thing where when she goes out as like Lady Ra, who is like an announcer for that Rara army, she's kind of a different personality, and then her Mitsuki personality is her true self, which is the one that Kazuki meets, and is one that falls in love with Kazuki while she's nursing him back to health because, of course she falls in love with him. Her relationship with Kazuki is just alright. Again, there's not much depth to it or like really any reason for them to like each other that we're given. They just kind of do, and I can appreciate a very surface level ship like that. They have some cute moments, I guess. Again, there's not much depth. It's just nice little moments, and honestly, they probably have the most like actual interactions like that with one another. Like, I don't think like Kazuki spends like 2 episodes in the Rara territory with her, and yeah, during that time they have a lot of scenes together. So I'd say she actually takes the cake for like the most actual relations with Kazuki. I still think the original world's Mitsuki is a better fit for him if we are going romantic, but if we're not, then I think they should just be super encoded. So yeah, they think she's a bad person, but in reality she's just this really nice, sweet person. And also her mom is like evil as fuck and like eventually hypnotizes her and makes her do some really fucked up shit. I'm not going to talk about her mom all that much. The antagonists in the show are kind of shit. They don't have much motivation. So all you need to know is her mom is really fucking evil. When Mrs. Ra becomes a good guy, because she eventually runs away from her mother and father and joins the Earth Defense Force, her and Kazuki have an episode where they plan a date together, and they were going to go on this date, and I was kind of excited because I was like, oh, how are they going to do an actual date? They're moving this forward? But of course they don't ever actually go on a date because the Earth Defense Force is like, hey, let's deport Mrs. Ra back to her country. We don't like her here. Which is very topical, given the political climate. Kazuki, of course, eventually manages to convince them to let her stay, and she starts living in the Sonata house with him because why wouldn't she? Overall, Mrs. Ra is okay. I liked the reveal that she was this world's Mitsuki. I thought that was pretty cool. It wasn't anything huge or crazy, like a big twist, but it was something nice to like switch it up and actually mess around with that whole parallel world idea. Because typically in stories where characters go to a parallel world, the fun part is getting to see how different this world's counterparts are. But in this anime, there's not much difference between the characters in the different worlds. Like Ken Sonata, Mitsuki's dad, is the same in both worlds. He's literally just the same guy. Like, there's not much differences when it comes to the different characters, which is a bit of a shame, and I think that's where the parallel world aspect falls short in the show. But overall, Mrs. Ra was alright. Her relationship with Kazuki was cute. Not much else to say there. On to the next, and the worst. Again, I'm not gonna look up how to pronounce that. I hate this character. Yayoi is such a weird character, and she frustrates me. When Kazuki first goes to the other world, he stumbles upon 2 mechs fighting. One of them is knocked down, and the pilot happens to be Yayao Shueil. Kazuki ends up saving her, and after that, she's infatuated with him. She eventually starts living in the Sonata house too, of course, and she sort of fills the role of a maid slash caretaker, looking after Kazuki, and she's sort of protective of him because she kind of wants to repay him back for, saving her life. So, Kazuki's kind of her knight in shining armor. Now, all that is fine and dandy, except it's not, because Yayoi is a grown-ass woman. She's an adult, and Kazuki's a teenager. So I don't really understand her feelings for him. Like, this is a fully grown woman. I don't get it. Again, if Yayoi was around Kazuki's age, I wouldn't really care for her all that much. She fits right into a cast like this. But not if she's not his age. She's an adult. It feels so ridiculous and childish when she's having these petty rivalry scenes with Mitsuki for Kazuki's attention. That's a grown woman competing with a teenage girl for the attention of a teenage boy. It's just dumb. Again, she's focused on Kazuki because he saved her life, which is fair to feel indebted to somebody for literally saving your life. But becoming infatuated and equating that to romantic feelings is the kind of thing a teenager does. It's not the kind of thing an adult woman does. I wouldn't mind if Hiya was just around because, she wanted to help out with his training, which she does a bit, but that's not why she's really around. If she just wanted to help out with his training, help him figure things out in this other world, serve as a mentor, I wouldn't mind that. But the romantic feelings is where it just throws me off. And it doesn't even go anywhere too. There's one episode where Mitsuki sets up an arranged marriage for Yayao in order to get away from Kazuki, and Yayao convinces Kazuki to crash the wedding and stop it from happening. This is the only episode where their dynamic is explored at all, like between Kazuki and Yayao, because he goes to stop the wedding. I'm not even sure why he actually stops it, now that I think about it. He doesn't seem to have any feelings for it at all. I'm not sure why he stops the wedding. That's weird. Besides that, Kazuki and Yayao pretty much have nothing going on. Like, she eventually becomes a teacher at his school, which leads absolutely nowhere because it only matters in one episode. One episode where they go to school and she's there and she's a teacher at their school and it never comes up again. I get that it's a short anime. There's only 13 episodes. But if you're gonna do a really short show with just 13 episodes, maybe cut out the fat. Maybe you could have taken out some of the stupid, pointless scenes that we have to actually develop your characters in this. Because as it stands, Yao is not really a character. She doesn't do anything. Like, she doesn't contribute to the plot in any meaningful way. At least D is piloting mechs. At least even Mrs. Ra is piloting mechs. Yao doesn't do anything. I actually can't point to anything that this character does in the show. She just stands around in the meeting rooms and just occasionally throws in a line there of motivation and gets into petty arguments and fights with Mitsuki. It's weird. Kazuki's relationship with Yayao was somehow more underdeveloped than his relationship with D, which is impressive. I would have thought that impossible. I thought D was like the lowest we could go, but Yayao somehow manages to take the cake. I have nothing more to say about this character. She is immature, underdeveloped, and she acts like a child, which is annoying to watch. All right, now that we've been through all the girls in the harem, this is my final ranking for them. In first place, we have Mitsuki Sonata. She definitely was the one with the most personality, and I actually liked her relationship with Kazuki. She's a good character. It's just there could have been a bit more there. And unfortunately, her relationship with the other girls in the harem doesn't go anywhere past I'm jealous of you, which I thought was a lot of wasted potential. They could have really done something, especially with her relationship with D. D's a pilot too. How does she feel about D's piloting skills? We never get that. She's only ever jealous when D's around Kazuki, which is sort of unfortunate. I think there was a lot that could have been done with this character, but they kind of just dropped the ball. In second place, we have Mrs. Ra, aka the Otherworld's Mitsuki. She's second place because she's actually the only one who has something going on with Kazuki. Like, they have lots of cute moments. They have the episode where he asks her out on a date, and it's really cute, even though they never do get to go on that date. And while there isn't much depth to it at all, if any, it's still a nice ship. It's cute. It's probably what I'd say if there was a relationship anywhere in the show, it's this one. I don't think Kazuki and Mitsuki would really work as a romantic relationship. I think that should have just been kind of platonic and sibling coded. If we're going romantic interest, then Mrs. Ra is definitely who I'd pair Kazuki up with. Again, not because they really have anything going for them, just because it's cute and the rest of the options are garbage. In third place, we have D. I can stomach D a lot more if I just go with my interpretation of her feelings as familial rather than romantic. But other than that, she's just kind of meh, doesn't really do anything. Again, she never talks, so she doesn't have any relationship with any of the other girls, which is a bit of a shame. And in last place, we have Yayao. Grown-ass woman, by the way. Overall, harem ranking is like a 6, 7 out of 10, and that's a hard carry from Mitsuki. Again, it's just a whatever cast. There's no real inner workings to the group. None of the girls really show any emotion towards each other besides jealousy, and that really sucks because it's just reducing these characters to their love interest being Kazuki, the boring-ass Kazuki. I think there could have been something done if we saw them interact with one another, but we don't. We only see them react in relation to Kazuki, which, again, is a big shame. And I'm not a big fan of that. I would much rather have my characters be characters in tandem to one another and not just all revolve around the main character. Let's talk music. This anime soundtrack is fucking amazing. Like, it is incredible. The opening on its own is one of the best I've ever heard in an anime. Like, it's probably easily top 5 for me. Like, dude, oh my god. So for me, music is a really big factor when I'm choosing to continue watching or drop a show, and this anime definitely had me watching. If the intro wasn't as good as it was, I probably would have been unmotivated to finish this. I probably would have tapped out at like episode 7. But, you know, just hearing that funky ass bass every single episode just kept me clicking next episode, because I knew as soon as I click that button, I get to hear the intro again. So, you know, it kept me hooked in a sort of weird way. Maybe that's just me who's like that. And it's not just the intro. I was listening to the OST the other day, and there are so many great tracks on here. And not just great tracks, memorable tracks. I stand by the take that, you know, it's not enough to make good music when you're telling a story. You have to make memorable music. You know, like, you know when your friend recommends you an album and you listen to it and it's not bad, like the music is put together well. Objectively, it's pretty good, but if that same friend plays a song from the album 2 days later, you wouldn't be able to recall hearing it. You know, it would just kind of in one ear, right out the other, because while the song is good, it's not very memorable. This anime has the opposite problem. So many of these songs are so memorable. Like, they play in the background of a lot of scenes, and I was listening to the OST, and I was like, dude, I was getting nostalgia for this shit, and I only watched it like 2 weeks ago, because I could remember these songs playing throughout the show while I was watching it, and, you know, listening to the OST, I was like, oh, I remember this song, it's pretty good, and I added a few of them to my playlist, because, again, the soundtrack is pretty baller. Reminds me of a lot of like a visual novel, like a Fate Stay Night kind of thing, that very mellow, sort of filler day vibe, and I really like that. But yeah, overall, music, sound design too, like even during the mech fights, pretty good. 10 out of 10 easily for the music. This video is the first of many, and, you know, hopefully before the end of the year, I want to do a lot more reviews like this. Again, watching the animes isn't really the hard part. I can do that very passively in my free time, but writing the reviews takes a bit of time. So if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. You know, maybe leave a comment down below, share with your friends who are weirdos and want to watch dudes talk about harem animes for some reason. But yeah, I'm currently working on the next harem review, and this one is particularly trashy. You know, I started off episode 1 with something that's, you know, alright. This next one is, I'm gonna have to do a lot of, I probably won't even be able to show like any clips at all from the show. This next one is very particularly trashy, so look out for that. And I've also decided that I'm gonna drop some of these shows. Like, I'm gonna allow myself to drop them. Like, at first I was planning on, you know, powering through, watching through each of them, but I don't think that would be healthy at all. So if I'm like an episode 4 or 5, and I'm like, this is just straight hot garbage, I'm not wasting my time on this, I'll pack it up and review those first 5 episodes that I saw, and we'll keep it pushing, just for my mental health. Anyways, thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.